Okay, there we go. We are now recording. So welcome everyone to the External Secrets Operator Meetup for May 2023. It's been quite a while since we had an online meetup. We did one in person at KubeCon. We are always looking for more presenters and people to show us what they've been up to. We've just had a brief conversation with Bjorn about what is a use case that we'd love to have a look under the covers at. So hopefully we'll gradually find more and more presenters to tell us about what they're doing with ESO. I guess since the last time that we had one of the online meetups, what's been really lovely is starting to see more and more people adding themselves into the adopters file, and this kind of sense that gradually the large cloud platforms are getting more and more interested in ESO, and we have a real sense of momentum gathering. Mark is here today to talk to us about Cisco and how they're using ESO. We've also seen VMware's Tanzu platform has added itself into the adopters file, and they're using ESO by default wherever people are using Tanzu. There's a real sense that there's more of this coming. So it feels like the project is really starting to gain steam and gain traction. And a bit of what Gustavo is going to talk about later are the last few pieces that we need to get in place in order to move to general availability. But we're getting really, really close to becoming what we feel is really quite a mature product. So huge kudos to the maintainers for getting the project to that point. Off we go. Oh, now I'm looking at the wrong thing. There we go. So the agenda for today is really just to hear about the ESO use case that Mark has, and to really enable us to understand what it looks like when you're running ESO at scale across multiple clusters with multiple namespaces. Then we've got a general project update from Gustavo, and finally some time for questions. Obviously, questions are welcome at any point in time through the presentation. Don't feel shy about asking people. I think all of us really enjoy thinking about questions and issues almost more than the things that we've thought out in advance. So we do have a code of conduct, which is just basically to say, be nice to other people and treat them how you'd like to be treated yourself. And without further ado, I can stop sharing my screen. And Mark, do you want to take over and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So hello, everyone. My name is Mark Shagi Kazar. Don't try to pronounce my name, just call me Mark. I'm an open source tech lead at Cisco right now. I've just moved to a new team, so I can spend more time on open source technologies. But before that, I've been with an SRE team within Cisco in a business unit called Emerging Technologies and Incubation. And my job as an SRE was to help people with no real operational experience run their applications on top of Kubernetes. That obviously included a bunch of stuff. But what's really important here is we had to take care of secret management in a way that scaled well with our use cases and teams. I'm also a CNCF ambassador as of this year. And you can find me on Twitter if you want to talk to me, drop me an email. So just a little bit about what Cisco and what ET&I does, just for you to understand our use case. ET&I is basically an incubating organization for emerging technology, which means, or when we started, it basically meant for our team, our SRE team, to support new projects basically every single week trying to deploy their applications to Kubernetes and show and present the usefulness of these new technologies to other people. So basically, every week or every second week, we had to be able to onboard a new project to our platform and deploy their applications, deploy their secrets, give them a build pipeline, etc. And these teams generally don't really have real production operational experience, which meant that as an SRE or a platform engineering team, we had to build all that in a way that we could easily create for a new team or provide the tools for a new team that wanted to use our platform. So how does it look like in practice? Basically, we run dozens of Kubernetes clusters. We have dozens of teams with their own applications deployed, often across multiple clusters. So production applications are generally deployed to multiple clusters at the same time, but obviously we have to deploy staging environments, we have to deploy developer environments, etc. So we have to deploy dozens of applications across different environments and namespaces and clusters. And everything that comes with that, we have to be able to scale to that size. So the challenges that come with that requirement is that we have to manage all that configuration across clusters, environment, and tenants. We have to make sure that teams cannot step on each other's toes. So we need access control and resource management in place. We need to be able to reduce the blast radius. So we have to be able to think about the size of the applications of these teams, and we have to be able to choose the bright cluster or even a dedicated cluster. And obviously, we need to be able to do secret management and rotation on a regular basis. Now, we decided to go with a GitOps-based model. So basically, every application gets deployed from Git using Argo CD, which is nice because it also, besides giving us an overview of what's really happening, it also gives us the auditability that we need in an enterprise. And we needed a secret management solution that works nice with GitOps and Argo CD. And after evaluating a couple of different options that really fits into our ecosystem, we decided to go with ESO. Obviously, that's why I'm here today. So we have one of the reasons why ESO worked well for us is we have a central HashiCorp vault. And not all of the other GitOps-based tools support pulling secrets from vault. So that was something that we needed. So we have a central HashiCorp vault managed by IT, but each team gets their own namespace. So we needed a tool that's able to deploy secrets from HashiCorp vault and supported namespaces as well. Surprisingly, not all of the tools support namespaces in HashiCorp's vault. So we deployed ESO and we configured ESO to deploy secrets from multiple namespaces for our teams into their namespace, into their Kubernetes namespaces. But at this point, this was our initial approach. And at this point, secret rotation was still kind of manual, which meant that when we changed something in Vault, we had to go into each cluster and make sure that we waited for ESO to pick up the change. Depending on the synchronization interval, that could have been from 10 minutes to 1 hour. If you wanted the secret to be rotated immediately, we had to change the external secret resource, or we waited for the synchronization interval, and then we had to manually restart the workload as well. So that was still a manual process. And if you think about the challenges of rotating secrets manually, it's a complex process. It takes a lot of time, and it's easy to make mistakes. And if you forget to, for example, if you forget to do this on one of the clusters that you have, and you load balance between those two clusters for the same application, you may get errors for half of your requests, and half of your requests may just pass through successfully. So basically, you can easily end up with disruption in your service availability, which is obviously bad. So we needed to find a solution where we could automate the whole process of rotating secrets. And if you think about how this works in general, you have a secret store, which in our case was HashiCorp's Vault. You have a secret provider, which could be AWS or GitHub or anything else. And then something, either a human operator or some kind of automation. For example, in case of HashiCorp's Vault with AWS, we are really a huge fan of the AWS secret engine, which is able to automatically rotate AWS credentials for us. So either a human operator or some automation generates a new secret, stores that in the secret store. And then on the other side, something picks up those changes and deploys the new secrets into your production environment. This is the general view. Now let's see how that whole thing works in Kubernetes. And when I talk about secret management in Kubernetes, I usually like telling people that if you want to use Kubernetes secrets, you need to plug the holes first. So you need to be able, you need to make sure that you turn on encryption at rest. You need to make sure that your RBAC is configured properly, and all the other things that the Kubernetes secret best practice guide details. Fortunately, now we have this guide, but if you want to use Kubernetes secrets, make sure you use them right. So obviously, as I mentioned, we use external secrets operator to synchronize secrets from our HashiCorp Vault instance into multiple Kubernetes clusters across multiple clouds. And we generally mount those secrets created by ESO as environment variables into deployments. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with how external secrets operator works. Just wanted to flash this very quickly. You can either configure cluster global secret stores or namespace scoped secret stores. We generally use cluster scope secret stores because teams, as I mentioned, each team gets their own HashiCorp Vault namespace, and teams generally have either multiple environments or even multiple applications deployed to the same cluster. So that we didn't want to create a secret store for each Kubernetes namespace when it uses the same Vault namespace. So we basically created cluster secret stores for our teams, and they don't actually have access to those resources. Like they don't actually manually create external secrets or read any of those secrets. We always deploy secrets from Argo CD. So it's relatively safe from an access control perspective to use cluster secret stores compared to secret stores, which would be namespace scoped. So, all right, secret is rotated in Vault. ESO picks up the change, synchronizes the secret to Kubernetes. What now? Obviously, what we did previously is that we waited for the secret to get to Kubernetes, or we manually changed something in the external secret custom resource. So we picked up the change immediately, and then we manually triggered a rollout for the workload. Obviously, that's not something that you want. We need some sort of automation. And fortunately, there is this pretty cool tool called Reloader, which is able to watch your workloads and detect changes in secrets and config maps. So basically, when a secret changes that is mapped or mounted in a deployment of yours in Kubernetes, it triggers a standard rollout similar to how would you do it with kubectl, not by deleting pods, but by running the kubectl restart rollout command. So basically changes an annotation on the deployment that triggers a standard rollout, which is cool because now you have the entire process automated and basically don't need anything or any human involvement to automatically rotate your secrets. So if you think about the process that we had before, now we have not one but two components watching for secrets. Something changes in the secret store, external secrets picks up the change, updates the secret in Kubernetes, and then Reloader picks up the change and triggers a standard rollout for your workload. So it works pretty great for most of the time. And it's great that it doesn't require any human involvement, but things can still go wrong. So first of all, you don't always know what can go wrong. So make sure to monitor everything. Make sure to grab the metrics that the ESO exposes. They actually have pretty cool SLI recommendations on their websites that you can use for alerting rules. One warning though is that some of the metrics contain the resource names, and in large scale, when you have, I don't know, dozens of clusters, hundreds of external secrets, that could potentially mean that you will have a high cardinality issue with the labels. So if you don't use those labels, make sure to drop them, or just drop the metrics when you collect them. Obviously, this is a problem when you collect all the metrics into a single Prometheus instance, for example. When you're collecting metrics just locally within the cluster, it's probably not a huge problem. But when you're collecting all the metrics together, this could become a problem. So just something to be aware of. There is also a graph on the dashboard that you could use, but I found that it's not very useful for debugging actual issues. It gives you a good overview of what's going on with the controllers and what's going on with ESO in general, but it doesn't really tell you where the problem is. So I actually opened an issue about this on the issue tracker, and I wrote down some ideas how we could improve the graph on the dashboard so it's more useful during an actual incident. So firstly, make sure to monitor everything. Second thing that you need to be aware of is when you change something in any of the configuration, basically, it's going to take some time to actually take effect. So when you change an external secret, you change the HashiCorp bolt configuration, for example, or you change another configuration that doesn't touch the external secret or doesn't change the external secret object, it's going to take some time, practically until the next secret sync period, until that change takes effect. And this actually caused us some problem in the past. So what we are doing right now is that whenever we change any of the configuration, we also change a so-called test secret and deploy the test secret, so we can immediately make sure that the configuration that we change will not break anything on the next secret synchronization cycle. So if you want to make sure that your configuration is your configuration works all the time, you need some of these tricks to actually test them in real time. By the way,
just can I ask questions now, or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I actually wanted to say at the beginning that feel free to interject and ask questions.
Thank you. This configuration that you're mentioning is the external secret configuration itself, or is more like a whole setup configuration?
Well, if you change something on the HashiCorp vault side, for example, in the authentication configuration, it's not going to take effect until either the next store validation or the next external secret configuration. When you change the external secret, obviously it synchronizes immediately, but when you change anything else, basically, it only takes effect when the next synchronization or store validation comes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. And last but not least, on the trouble side, and this is something I'm told should not happen anymore, but we actually had a rather large incident a while ago. And I actually checked the code, and I'm fairly confident that this was only a problem for us because we used an earlier version. But basically, when you have store validation enabled and your secret store goes down for a long time, in our case, it was 5 hours or something, the store validation reaches a backup so long that your secret synchronization basically stops working. The store validation feature, if you're not familiar with it, it basically tells ESO not to do any kind of synchronization until the store is actually valid, which means this ESO can actually talk to the store, which in our case was great because we have dozens and hundreds of ESO installations and secret stores. And before we enabled the store validation, ESO basically just hammered the HashiCorp Vault API, and the Vault operators told us either to change something or our access will be revoked. So we actually enabled store validation to make sure that doesn't happen. But with store validation, if the store validation reaches a long backoff, it means that none of your secrets will be synchronized, and actually no error on the secret synchronization side occurs other than the store validation not passing. And I actually checked, and I think the backoff is now capped at somewhere around an hour, I believe. So this shouldn't happen anymore if you are on a newer version of ESO, but it happened to us, and it actually caused an incident because the secret synchronization stopped working, and obviously a secret changed, and that caused an incident in one of the applications that we ran. And in that case, the solution was rather ugly. We basically had to change every cluster secret store. We had to make a change to re-trigger the store validation and get it out of the retry cycle, which worked. But still, this was a pretty nasty incident that we had to.
How did you bump that secret store? We usually change some dummy annotation.
Yeah, we did the same thing.
Is there a best practice to do that?
So we did the same thing, and one of the ideas that we entertained after the incident is automating bumping the cluster secret stores using something like Alert Manager. So you could have an alert rule that gets triggered by a long backoff for the store validation. So if the store validation fails for something like an hour, Alert Manager could go ahead and bump all of the secret stores to get out of the retry cycle. But at the moment, on the latest ESO version, the backoff is capped at 1 hour anyway, so you don't really need that anymore. The longest period of time you have to wait for right now is 1 hour for the store validation. So secret synchronization shouldn't stop working, or I guess it would, but it would still be retried after 1 hour.
It sounds like there's a need for more logging around these kind of error states though, right? Because as you were describing it, you said the logs didn't have any kind of meaningful error around what was happening.
So I'm gonna be honest, this happened a while ago. I think store validation errors may have been in the logs, but we didn't see any error in the external secret side. So the external secret resources were basically, the status was basically okay because no synchronization was attempted by ESO, and it said everything is fine. And when someone went, when someone checked the cluster secret store state, that's when we noticed that something is wrong. So you have to make sure that you alert not just for external secrets, but for secret store validation as well. And I believe there is a metric for that as well. So that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. And again, this exact incident shouldn't happen anymore because the backoff is now capped at 1 hour, I believe. I don't remember exactly, but the backoff shouldn't be more than 1 hour now, which means secret synchronization may still stop, but at least the store validation will be retried after 1 hour at most.
Mm-hmm.
Before going to the next slide, if you ever can't come up with a POC around using Alert Manager to trigger that, I do want to see it. So if you want to come here again, I'm really curious to see how that would work.
Well, the thing is that when we came up with that idea, after that we met at KubeCon, and then we discussed this whole problem, and you told me that this shouldn't happen anymore, and then we verified that it shouldn't happen anymore. So we haven't really moved forward with that idea, but it's still something that we could do. And also, since we use Argo CD, this could actually be very easy to do manually as well, if we wanted to. At the moment and in the middle of the incident, we just went to end and manually bumped every single cluster secret store because that was easier. But I guess there are multiple ways to attack this problem.
The underlying common thing that I've seen around many other users as well, and that's why I'm thinking that I want to see this POC just to see what people are doing about it. This is basically an asynchronous trigger of either the cluster store or the external secrets. And there are many use cases that actually having an asynchronous way of doing it would be better than just waiting for the refresh interval. So I just wanted to see what's available there. That's it. I was just curious.
Yeah, well, we don't really have that solution in place, but basically, I guess it would have been a script triggered by alert manager that bumped an annotation on the cluster secret store. So
not the prettiest solution.
No, not at all. But at least it would have worked. Like
the best solutions.
Yeah. That's right. All right. So basically, from the ESO side, the takeaway, I guess, or something that we've learned along the way is that you have to make sure that you understand how and when changes will take effect, so that you don't get surprised by the delayed effect or the changes taking effect with a delay. And you also have to make sure to monitor and alert for failures, because otherwise you have no idea if a synchronization failed and you are still running with an old secret. So make sure to do that. Yeah, and I do have a demo. I haven't prepared for actually doing the demo, but I do have a demo repository. I actually did a presentation on ESO at Open Source Summit in Vancouver about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So I have a demo in a repository. It's pretty simple. So if you want to give that a try, you can do that. Other than that, thank you for your attention and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. How did it go at Open Source Summit?
It was cool. It was a lot less crowded than KubeCon EU. But it was great. I mean, the Open Source Summit is more like a set of micro conferences, not a huge conference, which is interesting, and it also makes harder to choose from the presentations. Like there are a bunch of presentations that you could go to at the same time in different topics, but fortunately the records will be up there, so I will catch some of the presentations that I couldn't attend in while I was there.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions for Mark?
I don't have a question. I have a request. Can you share the link to the demo repo that you showed in the
of course. Yeah. And I can also share the slides, so it's
cool.
up on my website.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask one, Mark, about you put up the slide that was showing like a high view of the clusters that you're running. And I noticed that there were quite a few different cloud providers that you're running on top of. So you've obviously developed something that's quite heavily cloud agnostic. I just wanted to ask how cloud agnostic it is, and can you tell us a bit more about any of the challenges that you've found on different providers, or have you found that once you've set it up to be cloud agnostic, it doesn't really matter where you go?
So I actually missed VMware Tanzu from the list because we have that as well. And I think we have OpenStack in the list as well. So we have quite a few different providers. But yeah, as you said, we always try to keep the whole stack as provider agnostic as possible. And obviously HashiCorp's provider, it's maintained by IT, so it's not something that we run. ESO is fairly provider agnostic. And we use ESO with the Kubernetes API authentication in HashiCorp's vault. So that's provider agnostic as well. Argo CD works fairly great with all of the different providers. So yeah, the whole stack is mostly provider agnostic. Obviously, we need some integrations with cloud provider infrastructure like For example, for workload identities, we use workload identities wherever we can, so that we don't have to use, for example, AWS IAM secrets when we are running on AWS. But when we are running on a different cloud provider, we may still need access to AWS. In those cases, we use HashiCorp's secret backends for AWS. So we try to keep the whole Kubernetes stack fairly vendor agnostic, and Kubernetes actually helps with that a lot. So Kubernetes itself is mostly vendor agnostic. So yeah.
Thank you. Bjorn.
One of the challenges I'm currently facing, and you also covered it in your talk, is what happens if you're changing the password in your vault, and ESO is updating the Kubernetes secret. You could use Reloader, but it's kind of brutal way to update it, especially for stateful sets. You might want to avoid that, and I'm wondering, maybe this is a question to the whole audience, whether there are approaches to update passwords by something like a sidecar or something like that, so which avoids to restart the whole pod. Actually, I haven't seen something, so I'm just asking that question. If you ever thought about that idea to not use the reloader, because there is, for example, there is the Ingress, which automatically detects any update on, let's say, basic authentication, and it automatically reloads everything.
So I have two answers to that, actually. One, if you mount your secrets as files, you could build an automation within your application to reload the configuration when the file changes. That works pretty well with Kubernetes secrets and mounted as files into pods. But I would argue that it's actually a good thing to use Reloader because Kubernetes may reschedule your pods anyway. So it may reschedule your workloads on its own. And using Reloader is not that different from how Kubernetes would reschedule your pods. For example, a node goes down or a node gets upgraded, your pods will be rescheduled. So basically, it's always better to prepare for that, and that's something we like to communicate to our teams as well. Is that your application may be rescheduled, it may be stopped and restarted without any kind of notice. So it's something that you have to deal with if you run on Kubernetes anyway. And Reloader is not much of a difference if you think about it. But you can obviously, if you wanna mount your secrets as files and reload them in your application, that's also an option.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark, for sort of lifting the roof and letting us have a look underneath.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
No, that's great. Gustavo, if you're there, I can start sharing my screen again. If you want to just tell me when you want to slide through. Oh, just a minute.
The slide that you're at.
I am Zoom defeated. Here we go.
So thanks, Mark, for joining. It was very insightful. I really like this kind of talks because it's what I personally like to know the most, is how people are using things. It really helps us even to think about what's next. Regarding the project updates that we have here, I'm going to summarize 4 project updates and then a very quick GA status that we have and roadmap. The most meaningful project updates that we've had is the Kubernetes push secret, which is now being available ever since version 0.8.2, and the merge policy capability for templating. This helps fixes a lot of issues that we had been for a long while in the templates, also releasing this new version 0.8.2. If you go to the next slide, Ben, with the release of Kubernetes push secret, our provider feature support for the main providers that we support is now fully complete, which I think on the previous past meetup on June last year, I told that this would mean that we would go to GA. I was not entirely 100% true. It's not that I wasn't true, but because after talking to the maintainers, we figured out we needed more things to do. Before talking about these other things, because there is a call to action to anyone that actually wants to help, just continuing on some big marks on project updates. Go to the next slide, Ben, please. We, as part of the 0.8.2, one of the things that we've been trying to carry along for a while, and it's now part of it, is our long-term support process. So right now, any security bumps, they will get backported to the minor version previous to the one that we're currently running. So if you check right now, our repo has a tag for 0.8.2, which is the newest one, and a security bump for 0.7.x, now 0.7.3. So they're both running in parallel. It is a process that we're still not 100%. We're still figuring out, solving a lot of some bugs here and there, but it is a building block that we need in order to go to GA. Just telling here that this is done as well. And I would also like to celebrate and up Ben's message on the very beginning that we have VMware Tanzu and Mercedes-Benz as part of the adopters. If you are here, you use ESO, you like ESO, commit a PR, adding yourself to the adopters really help us, especially in our next steps as a project where we will try to go for CNCF incubating status. So it really helps to bring out the project relevance, and this is one of the criteria that we need to have there. But yeah, just taking a moment to celebrate. Thanks. I forgot the names of the people that added both VMware Tanzu and Mercedes-Benz, but thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Is Cisco on that list?
Cisco is not on that list, Mark. If you
Oh,
can add Cisco on that list, I would be very happy.
I have to correct that mistake.
Thank you. Thank you. Having said that, regarding GA, if you can go to the next slide, there is only one thing that that is difficult to do that we still need to do in order to go to GA, which is basically ESO right now is such an easy to use provider, which is compatible with so many secret stores, that right now we have a security issue from a point of view. Imagine that we are a user that uses, I don't know, Conjure and HashiCorp Vault. When I install ESO, I download the code to communicate with all the 17, 18 providers that ESO supports. This includes AWS, this includes GCP, this includes, which from a security perspective is bad. So the missing bit that we want to do before go to GA is allowing for out of the 3 providers, meaning that you can actually pick and choose which providers ESO will support for your installation. So if you're only using Conjure, you only have Conjure available there. So it's a security practice that we really need to do. And from a maintenance perspective, call to action, we have been studying how to do plugins on Go for a while, but we still would like to know your thoughts, your opinions, if you ever worked with it. Please just chat with us on Kubernetes Slack. We really want to know what's the best way to do here. It is something that is not completely clear to us. I don't think any of us has had any previous experience with that. We really want to get this right because it's the missing bit. Please come help. Go on, Mark.
I think you are not the only one. I'm also facing that challenge on another project, and I think a lot of other projects are looking for the right plugin strategy for Go projects. So I'm really hoping that maybe we can make this a community effort across projects. I don't know, but yeah. I have at least 2 open source projects facing this challenge right now, and I'm pretty sure there are others.
Yeah, even Kubernetes 6 projects are facing that. I know that for Kube Scheduler, they're kind of now considering to go with WASM. Exactly. Also, they are actually discussing WASM. So this is something that we actually will basically see. We are trying to investigate what's the best way, and it is really the missing bit for us to be confident to release a general available version of ESO, which is with a low security coverage, attack surface, basically. That's the whole goal, which is good. I also put a link of the project roadmap there. You can check it. You can see the issues that were marked as going to GA. Most of them are small issues, but needed from a process perspective, like defining the V1 CRDs, bumping everything, etc. And the main one, I think I added a slide. I'm not sure if you will have it there, Ben. Can you go to the next slide just in case?
Oh, I tried to go to
Or click the link. Click the link is perfect. So that's even better. So it's basically issues 46 and 47, column 46 and 47 on the 1.0 GA table. These are the ones that are hard and that we're looking at. The rest, they are important, but we know they are more of a standardization bit than really work effort. So if anyone has experience, again, with Go plugins, please do come and say hi. We need your help. We really do need your help. That is it that I had to say.
Oh, there we go. You'd put it
yeah.
in a nicer format than me clicking on it and looking at it. Whatever.
It's just the yellow bits there marked, but yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great. So just to reiterate that, please, anyone who knows about plugin strategies, Mark, call your friends, whoever can help us out here, right? We'll see where we get to. Obviously, the usual request to contribute. We've got a set of good first issues for anyone who'd like to get started. Reach out to us on Kubernetes Slack. We'll help you to get started. You can see the QR code down here in the bottom right for Code C. If you are trying to get started, make sure you have a look at the dependency map and can use it to be able to understand when you're changing anything, what it's likely to impact. We also have a contributing process that you can see in the middle there and a developer guide. Yeah, please do get involved. Even if you're interested in creating code tools and working with Code C, if you want to help us to continue to develop this community further, or if you want to go the whole hog and start maintaining, just let us know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Just all that remains really is just to say thank you to everyone. We have got a feedback slide anyway, but if anybody wants to give us any feedback or reach out to us and let us know how it was, we would really appreciate understanding how to make this meetup better in future. Thanks very much, everyone. I can stop the recording there. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask or anything they'd like to say?
Thank you all. Thank you, Mark, for your show and tell. It's really good to see this kind of things.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think, yeah.